Hey everybody, George with the Art of Water, and I wanted to talk to you tonight about the importance of a quarantine tank. If you don't have one set up and you've been thinking about how important that is, I want to talk to you a little bit about my experiences and how important I think it is that when you're introducing new fish into your main population or main community tank to quarantine fish for a period of time to make sure that you're not introducing disease or other problems that might come up over a period of time. This is my quarantine tank. I've had several of these over the years, but it's basically set up just like any other tank, giving the fish an opportunity to be in an environment where if they are being introduced to your community tank in a short period of time, they have a place where they can be watched for any diseases that might come up, any behavioral problems that might be a factor, and or just making sure that the overall health of the fish is good before putting them into your regular population. Now, a lot of people I know can't afford necessarily to set up a quarantine tank and don't understand really how important it is. But any fish that I bring into my um, fish room is quarantined for at least 2 weeks before they're introduced into my regular population. Now, I have 5 Rasboras in here. I don't remember what they are because they're hiding right now and I can't see them. But unfortunately, I know that they're all alive because they've only been in here an hour or so, and I've kind of looked around the tank, and they're for sure in here, and they're healthy. This tank has been cycled for about 7 months and has never really been used for anything except for quarantining new fish. And the importance of that is only clear when you have gone through a disaster of some sort or brought disease into your community tank and you have had to sort of tear it all apart um, in an emergency to make sure that your fish are not all going to perish. I've had this happen to me early on in the hobby when I was not familiar with how important a quarantine tank was. And trust me, you only have to have one bad experience before you realize that this is very, very important to have a tank that you can put new fish in that are going to be introduced into your regular population at some point, excuse me, but are not ready to do that now. Two of the things that you need to have with a quarantine tank is an environment where the fish feel, of course, happy and safe, and an environment that is much like a normal tank, only you don't have to put as much hardscape and plants and that sort of thing in that tank because it's temporary. Um, the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to watch these fish over several weeks and to make sure that they don't show any signs of disease, especially if you're getting them from a supplier that you're not familiar with. Maybe it's a new supplier or this people that you've been working with have changed suppliers for whatever reason, and they are not somebody you're familiar with. I just would not trust that these fish are 100% healthy until you've been able to observe them over a period of time and watch their behaviors, watch for any illnesses such as ick, funguses, parasites, anything like that that would stand out and make you a little bit suspect as to whether or not the fish are healthy. Anyways, what I wanted to tell you was just how important it is to have a quarantine tank. I know that a lot of people can't afford it, but if you can afford a small 3.5, 4 gallon tank that can handle 5 to 6 fish that are small, I think it's a really good idea to have something like that ready to go at all times so that when you do buy new fish, they are able to um, be put into that quarantine tank, observed, and know that they're healthy before you introduce them to your community of fish. Trust me, the money that you put into something like this is going to come back to you tenfold the one time that you find out that you have fish that you have purchased that are just not doing well because of a disease or something of that nature, and you lose the whole stock. And that's not fun, because what happens then is if you introduce them into your community tank and that disease gets spread around, um, it's really heartbreaking when that happens. So I suggest that you quarantine your fish when at all possible. I know people want to stick their fish right into their community tank as soon as they get them because they want to enjoy them, but taking a few weeks can cause you to save yourself a lot of heartache if things go wrong. And I think anyone who has experienced this knows that this can be a very costly and a very devastating situation, especially to a tank that is a long established tank where you have to treat fish and may lose some of your fish that you've become attached to. It's so important, I think, to make sure that these fish are quarantined and that they are free of any kind of disease, parasites, etc. And I think that in the big picture, if you do this, being patient and quarantining these fish is going to go a long ways towards making your experience with this hobby a much more relaxing experience. I know that everybody doesn't have the ability to just set up a quarantine tank, but if you can, I think you should do that always and without exception. You just don't know when you're introducing fish what their situation is, where they may have picked up a disease of some sort, either at your fish supply location. A lot of times your supplier or pet store will not tell you that they have a new supplier, and that makes it difficult because you're going to bring fish home, you're going to put them in your community tank, and you're going to possibly have a disaster that is going to really, really be heart-wrenching. It can be a very costly situation, both financially and emotionally, and I just think that if you can quarantine your fish and you have the ability to do that, it's the best thing that you can possibly do. Anyways, this is George with The Art of Water, and I hope that you got some good information from this. Please comment if you have any questions. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and please give me a thumbs up if you like the video. Have a great night, and we'll talk again soon.